to this category road, you should be going this higher speed. If you take out that double yellow line, it improves the safety of the road. It saves you money, and it means the motorist won't crunch up right next to the parked cars or right next to the bicyclist. So many of your roads, my recommendation is don't paint them, put the paint somewhere else, and do it perhaps with edge lines. This happens to be Burlington, Vermont. This is a major road between the downtown and the university. I think you can see it's carrying a lot of traffic, and it's working better because they aren't forcing all the vehicles over to one side all of the time. So notice the motorist who's passing the bicyclist is given an added berth. But if you had a double yellow line there, that motorist would feel compelled to stay inside that double yellow line and now marginalize the life of that bicyclist. So this is just an example of saving money and doing the right thing and being pioneers to be able to come up with this before other places in Alabama do. And by the way, when you do this, turns out you're not breaking any rules. That the thresholds for when you put in double yellow lines are much higher than most of your streets in your downtown. You would still put in the double yellow right at the intersection. Motorists need to know where to queue. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really just using our common sense and stop following matrices that really weren't based on hard science. They really weren't. And another recommendation on your several signalized intersections in the downtown, put in post-mounted signals. They're very inexpensive, and they allow the motorist gaze to now be where it should be, where they can see the gaps in traffic and where they can see the pedestrians. So it helps the pedestrian, it makes the whole road safer, and it's one of the cheapest forms of traffic signal control devices that we know how to place. You can see some of them positioned here, and that would be my recommendation on a number of your locations. Another very inexpensive solution, and these could either be paid for by local merchants or created in your local industrial arts classes, right? Figure out what is your brand, what is your logo, what makes Fairhope Fairhope, and then come up with bike racks and other items that are as beautiful as your trash cans. And by the way, you have some of the best trash cans in America. Now, bike lanes are another wonderful invention. The one on the left is meant to be a joke. But there are a couple things we keep in mind. First of all, if we put in the right dimensions, bicyclists do not get doored. And if you're a bicyclist, you know what that means. And I also want to share that either bike lanes or paved shoulders are the safest safety feature we can add to any road. Not for the bicyclist alone, although it's great for the bicyclist. For the motorist, think about hydroplaning. Think about, after a big storm, how the grassy edge that will, over time, build up, will trap the water, and now take out the life of the motorist. So you want bike lanes, or you want paved shoulders, because they'll siphon the water out of the travel lane. And that's one of 22 benefits of bike lanes. Only 2, again, are for bicyclists. Another benefit of bike lanes is it allows you to keep a fairly tight turning radii and handle bigger vehicles. It opens up sight lines. It makes driving much easier when you dedicate some of your road space to the edge of the road for another purpose. Another element that we talked about as we talked and walked was double the width of your edge lines. Don't go with 4 inches, go with 8 inches. And by just spending a little more on paint, it's much more visible and the motor's speed comes down. So instead of doing crazy things like putting in speed humps, you put in good quality edge lines to the street, and now the motorist reads the street in a much safer condition and now drives at a safer speed. We also talked about the possibility, if you choose to colorize your bike lanes. This is in the state of California. You can see they've not only colorized, but they've stamped it and put in a very nice defining edge, as you see here And by the way, you could ride with the highest pressure tires on what appears to be brick and realize there's absolutely a totally smooth surface. And so it's really cool. I've got this actually in front of my house in Florida. Another recommendation we provided was to consider taking your third lane, your turn lane, and colorize that. And now your travel lanes look narrower, and the motorists respond correctly. So now, whether you're seeing a cargo being delivered from the center, or someone is passing, someone is parking, whatever it would be, then it is definitely meant to be a place that's much quieter and so on. These are all in a town called Manitou Springs, Colorado. After we went in and did the treatments in Manitou, on average, the businesses started to make 30% more money. That's huge for a small town and a small business person. We didn't look or talk specifically about a flat roundabout or what we now call a mini roundabout, but you do have some locations for them. And in this location, we didn't have room for a full roundabout, so the town came up with the idea that they wanted something very decorative, very attractive, that would handle all cars easily, but then when the big semi-tractor trailer came, the rear tandem wheels of the rig would go over the flat surface. This one doesn't have a rig with it, or a trailer with it, but you can see it makes it around without having to touch it. Bike lanes have many values. I'll go through these fairly quickly, but I wanted to set the stage for bike lanes and then give you some dimensions. Now, one of the things I'm not sure I want to sell to you, but it's getting close to what I want to sell to you, is to put in 6-foot wide parking lanes. Now, I'm suggesting, well, you probably don't have the courage to go with 6, so what's wrong with 7? But definitely don't go with 8 or 9, and here's the advantage. If I'm a motorist getting in or out of my car, I want a place to step into that's not into traffic. As a bicyclist, I don't want to be doored. So if you rededicate your parking spaces, and again, you could go with 7, now you've got 2 more feet that you can put into the bike lane and get you further away from the travel lanes. By the way, this is a major highway. It's the Pacific Coast Highway in California. You can see it's being done already in the south. That happens to be Davidson, North Carolina. You can see they're using 6 foot. You can see how a car fits in 6 foot. But look at the trick. We then did a valley gutter. The valley gutter is 2 feet wide, so you're back to 8 feet. But you can read it the other way. The bike lane's 4, which is a little tight. But the valley gutter gives you 2 additional feet. The key here is to stick with 10-foot travel lanes. You don't need them. By the way, this particular road is a major state road and is carrying 18,000 cars, far more than any of your roads. And notice what they've done. They've inset the parking, made the parking bay 6 feet, put in the valley gutter, and then a 4-foot bike lane, and that gives plenty of operational space. So the question is, would a person in Fairhope be able to park in a 7-foot space in a Cadillac, what is this car